Look around you, the screen in your hands, the air on your skin, the thoughts now forming in your mind. Are they real? And if they are, what does that word even mean? Every day we touch tables, count numbers, feel love, and remember yesterday. But a table is wood. Wood is atoms. Atoms are energy. A number has no weight. A memory has no location. Yet they all are. This is the quiet wonder that never sleeps at the heart of philosophy. The study of being as being. Not this or that thing, but existence itself. The Greeks called it ontologia. We call it the most ancient and most unsettling question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Some say reality is a river, forever flowing. Others say it is a stage of shadows cast by eternal ideas. And a few dare to ask, what if the stone and the dream are two different kinds of is? In this video, we are not going to solve existence. We are going to map it. 5 great approaches, 2 fundamental types of being, and 3 questions you cannot escape once you have heard them. So close your eyes for a second, open them, and ask yourself, what does it mean to be? Before we dive into the 5 approaches, the 2 types of being, and the 3 questions that will flip your worldview upside down, let me ask you something. Hit pause right now if you can answer this. What does the word is actually mean? Take a second. The sky is blue. I am thinking. God is. Same word, 3 completely different kinds of existence. That, right there, is the doorway to ontology. Ontology, from the Greek ontos, being, and logos, study, is the branch of philosophy that asks, what exists? Not how does it exist, not why does it exist, but what does it mean to exist at all? And here's why this matters. Stick with me, because this is where most people get it wrong. Science tells us about the behavior of things. Physics says atoms vibrate. Biology says cells divide. But no science can tell you why there is something rather than nothing. That's not a physics problem. That's an ontology problem. Think of it this way. A fisherman knows the shape of every fish in the river, but ontology asks, what is the river itself? What is water? What is being before any fish swims in it? So if you've ever lain awake at 2 a.m. wondering, is this chair real, or is it just a bundle of perceptions in my mind? Congratulations, you've already done ontology. You just didn't know the name. And here's the hook. In the next 10 minutes, you're going to learn a framework that 90% of people never even hear about. By the end of this video, you'll be able to look at literally anything, a tree, a tweet, a memory, a dream, and ask the right philosophical questions. So don't go anywhere, because first up, the 5 great battles over the nature of reality. And trust me, the first one will change how you see time itself. Let's start with the most unsettling idea of all. Everything changes. Before Plato, before Aristotle, there was a man named Heraclitus. He watched the rivers of Ephesus and said something that broke philosophy in half. Panta re. Everything flows. Here's the core claim. There is no permanent substance, no stable thing. What we call a mountain is just a slow explosion. What we call you is a different set of cells than 7 years ago. Even this video, frame by frame, is a different collection of pixels. So what is real? For Heraclitus, change itself is the only reality. Being is becoming. Stability is an illusion we create because our senses are too slow. Example, think of a flame. Is it one object? No, it's a process, a constant dance of oxygen and fuel. The flame exists only as long as it keeps changing. You are that flame. Your relationships, your beliefs, your country. And here's the part that will make you question everything. If change is all there is, then yesterday's you is a different being than today's you. So when someone says, I've always been the same person, Heraclitus would laugh. But, and this is a huge but, If everything flows, how do we have knowledge? How can we speak of truth if truth itself drifts? That's where the next philosopher comes in, and he will stand completely against Heraclitus. Parmenides says, change is impossible. Stay tuned, because the collision between these two will give birth to Western philosophy itself. Comment below, do you feel like a river or a rock? Be honest. Heraclitus told us everything flows. But if everything changes, how can anything be true? How can there be right or wrong, beauty or ugliness, if a river never stays the same? That question haunted a student of Socrates, a man named Plato, as you know him, and his answer will flip your world inside out. Plato said, "Stop looking at the river, look at what makes the river possible." Here's the radical claim of idealism. The world you see, touch, and taste is not the real world. It's a copy, a shadow, a flicker on the wall of a cave. Real being, true existence, belongs to ideas or forms. These are perfect, eternal, changeless patterns that exist outside space and time. You've never seen a perfect circle, but you know what a perfect circle is. That knowledge comes from the ideal realm. Let me make this concrete. Think of justice. You've seen just acts, a fair judge, an honest friend, but those acts are never perfectly just. They're approximations. So how do you recognize justice at all? Plato's answer? Your soul remembers the idea of justice from before you were born. And here's why this is a mind-blowing shift. If idealism is true, then mathematicians don't invent truths, they discover them. The Pythagorean theorem was true before any human drew a triangle. It will be true after Earth is gone. That's ideal existence. Timeless, spaceless, and more real than your smartphone. Pause and think. When you say, "This song is beautiful," are you talking about the vibrations in the air? Or are you glimpsing an eternal form of beauty that no musician can fully capture? Now, Plato's version is ancient, but idealism got a massive upgrade in the 19th century from a German giant, Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. Hegel said, reality is not a bunch of static forms. Reality is mind unfolding itself through history. The universe is not a machine, it's a thought. Example, for Hegel, your individual consciousness and the entire cosmos are two sides of the same spirit, Geist. When you learn, the universe learns through you. When societies clash, thesis versus antithesis, they create a new synthesis, and that's reality growing. Here's the hook for retention. If Hegel is right, then history has a direction. The Cold War, the internet, AI, all are steps of mind becoming self-aware. That means your life is not random. You are a neuron in a cosmic brain. Does that feel empowering or terrifying? Comment empowered or terrified below. I read every single one. But idealism has a mighty enemy, a tradition that says, enough with the shadows and the spirits. There is only one thing, and you're sitting on it. Next up, materialism. The view that your thoughts, your love, your soul are nothing but atoms in motion. And if that's true, what happens to free will? Hit that like button if you want to see how materialism crushes idealism and whether it can survive its own logic. Subscribe so you don't miss the next two approaches and the three ultimate questions. Idealism says, mind first, matter second. The table is a shadow, the idea of table is real. But try telling that to someone who just stubbed their toe. Materialism is the philosopher's slap in the face. It says, stop dreaming, there is only one substance, matter. Everything else, thoughts, feelings, souls, gods, is either an illusion or a byproduct of physical processes. This is not a fringe view. It is the default assumption of most scientists, most atheists, and probably your hidden instinct when you're being brutally honest. Let's go back to the 5th century BCE. A man named Democritus looked at a loaf of bread and said, if you keep cutting it in half, you'll eventually reach something uncuttable. He called it atomos, indivisible, the atom. Here's the radical bet. Everything is just atoms moving in the void. Your joy? Atom collisions. Your despair? A different configuration of atoms. Even your sense of self is a useful fiction cooked up by your brain to keep your body alive. Pause and let that land. If materialism is true, then when you die, there is no soul to float away. The atoms disperse, the pattern ends, and that's it. No heaven, no hell, no judgment. Just thermodynamics. But materialism is not just ancient. It got its modern upgrade from Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Marx said, "Don't look at ideas to understand history. Look at who owns the factories." For Marx, the ideal, religion, morality, philosophy, is just a superstructure built on top of the economic base, material production. Your beliefs about God? Shaped by your class. Your sense of justice? Shaped by who pays your rent. Change the material conditions, and ideas change automatically. Example: why did people stop believing in witches? Not because philosophers proved witches don't exist, because the material conditions that made witch hunts useful, social instability, religious power, collapsed. Ideas are ghosts. Matter is the machine. Here's where materialism gets uncomfortable for the materialist. If everything is matter, then thought itself is just chemical reactions. But if my thought is just chemistry, then your thought is just chemistry. And if both are chemistry, then no one is reasoning. Atoms are just bumping into atoms. That's the self-refutation problem. The materialist says, my argument is true because it's based on physical evidence. But that truth is just another brain state. Why should we trust a brain state over any other brain state? Let me make this personal. When you fall in love, a materialist says, that's just dopamine and oxytocin. But does explaining the chemicals erase the experience? Does knowing that water is H2O make you less thirsty? Comment below. Can materialism explain why you care about truth? Or does it reduce everything, including morality, to a survival algorithm? I want to see your take. And if you're feeling attacked right now, good. That means you're thinking. But materialism is only one half of a famous pair. The next approach says, you're both right and both wrong. Reality has two floors, matter and mind, and neither can be reduced to the other. Next up, dualism. The view of René Descartes, the man who said, I think, therefore I am. But if mind and matter are separate, how do they talk to each other? That puzzle will break your brain. Materialism says you are atoms. Idealism says you are thought. Both are clean, simple, satisfying, until you stub your toe and feel pain. Where does that pain live? In the toe? That's matter. In your mind? That's thought. But the pain is one experience. This is the puzzle that drove a 17th century French philosopher, René Descartes, to a radical conclusion. He said, the world is made of two fundamentally different substances. Neither can be reduced to the other. The first substance is res extensa, extended thing. Matter, space, physical stuff. Your brain, your heart, this microphone, Mars, a grain of sand. All of it obeys the laws of physics. Push it, it moves. Break it, it breaks. The second substance is res cogitans, thinking thing. Mind, consciousness, thoughts, doubts, fears, joys, memories, intentions. This substance has no location. You cannot put a thought under a microscope. You cannot weigh a decision. And here's the shock. Descartes argued that these two substances are completely independent. The mind can exist without the body can exist without the mind. That's a corpse. You, your true self, are the mind. The body is just a vehicle. You've heard the famous line, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Descartes didn't mean thinking proves existence. He meant, I can doubt my body, I can doubt the world, but I cannot doubt that I am doubting. That doubting is the unshakable fact, and that fact is not physical. Let this sink in. When you dream tonight, your body lies still, yet you fly, you fall, you kiss, you cry. Where is that world? Not in your bedroom, it's in res cogitans. For Descartes, Dreams are not evidence of illusion. They are evidence that mind is real and separate. But dualism has a famous wound, a hole in its heart that philosophers have been poking for 400 years. If mind and matter are different substances, how do they interact? When you decide to raise your arm, an event in the mind, atoms in your muscles move. How does a non-physical thought cause a physical motion? Where does the ghost touch the machine? Descartes had a guess. He pointed to the pineal gland, a tiny structure deep in the brain. He thought that's where the mind pulls the levers. We now know the pineal gland regulates sleep, not telekinesis. So the problem remains. Think about this. When you feel fear, your heart races. That's matter responding to mind. But then your racing heart makes you more afraid, mind responding to matter. The two are locked in a dance. But how do two different substances even meet? This is called the mind-body problem, and it is not solved. Every time you take a painkiller for a headache, you are betting on materialism. Chemicals fix a mental state. Every time you say, "I changed my mind," you are betting on dualism. Something non-physical just flipped a switch. Where do you stand? Comment below. Is your mind just your brain, or is it something else? Be honest. There is no wrong answer, but there is a wrong reason. Dualism has one more gift to give us. It gave birth to modern psychology, to the idea of mental health, to the concept that you can be physically fine but spiritually broken. It also gave us the language of human rights, because if the mind is separate, no government owns it. But a rival tradition says, you don't need to guess about interaction. You don't need a pineal gland. You just need to look at experience itself, without theories, without physics, without metaphysics. Next up, Phenomenology. The approach that says, stop asking what reality is made of. Start describing how it shows up, because the only thing you cannot doubt is the appearance itself. Subscribe and tap the bell. The final approach will change how you see your own living room. Dualism gave us a puzzle. How does mind touch matter? Materialism gave us a punch. You are atoms. Idealism gave us a dream. You are thought. But every single one of these starts with a theory, a guess about what reality is made of before looking at reality itself. A German philosopher named Edmund Husserl, working in the early 1900s, said, "Stop. You're doing it backwards. Before you ask what a thing is, matter, idea, or both, just look at how it shows up in your experience. Don't explain, don't reduce, don't speculate, describe." This is phenomenology, from the Greek phenomenon, that which appears, and logos, the study of. Phenomenology is the rigorous, disciplined description of what appears to consciousness, exactly as it appears, without smuggling in any assumptions about a world behind it. Here is the radical move. Husserl said we need to perform the epoche, a Greek word for suspension. We put aside every belief about whether the thing exists out there. We put aside physics. We put aside metaphysics. We put aside common sense. We just attend to the phenomenon itself. Let me show you. Look at this coffee cup. Normally you'd think, it's a ceramic cylinder, probably made in a factory, atoms vibrating, reflects light. Phenomenology says, no, just describe. The cup presents itself as warm, curved, white, slightly chipped near the rim. It offers a handle to my right hand. It has a certain heaviness when lifted. That description, the cup as experienced, is the only thing you can ever be absolutely certain of. Whether it exists when you close your eyes, that's a second step. First, just see what is given. And here's why this is liberating. Phenomenology dissolves centuries of pointless fighting. The materialist says, the cup is atoms. The idealist says, the cup is an idea. The dualist says, the cup is both. The phenomenologist says, you are all arguing about ghosts. The cup is the cup. It shows up. That showing, that's the only reality you actually have. Think about this. When you are in love, do you first check the dopamine levels? No. You feel the butterflies. You replay the smile. That feeling is the reality of love. Explaining it does not make it more real. Phenomenology says, honor the appearance as appearance. But phenomenology is not easy. It demands a kind of meditation. You have to unlearn decades of habit, the habit of jumping to, what is it really, before you've seen what it is like. Husserl spent thousands of pages describing a single melody, a single memory, the way time flows through our consciousness. Let me give you a practice. Right now, look at the back of your own hand. Don't say skin, bone, cells. Just watch. Notice the tiny hairs catching the light, the way shadows gather between your knuckles, the faint map of veins, the slight warmth from within. That landscape, that is the phenomenon of your hand. It is richer than any biological diagram. And here's the hidden power of phenomenology. It gives us a way to study consciousness without reducing it to brain chemistry. For Husserl, consciousness is always consciousness of something. Fear is fear of the dark. Desire is desire for the chocolate. Memory is memory of the childhood garden. You cannot find a pure, empty consciousness floating around. Consciousness is always a relationship. Comment below. Try describing one ordinary thing, a pencil, a window, your breakfast, without using any scientific or abstract words, just pure appearance. What do you see? Phenomenology influenced everything, from existentialism, Sartre, Heidegger, to cognitive science, to the way we study emotions. It taught us that the first question is never what exists, but how does existence show itself to someone who is living through it? But let me be honest with you. After 5 approaches, Fluxism, Idealism, Materialism, Dualism, Phenomenology, you might feel dizzy. Each one seems right, each one seems wrong. That's the point. Ontology does not give you a single answer. It gives you a map, and every map has limits. So now we shift, from approaches to categories. Because no matter which approach you prefer, every philosopher has to face a basic distinction. Some things exist out there, in space and time, touching your senses. Other things exist in here, in thought and meaning, untouched by decay. Next up, real being and ideal being, the concrete and the abstract, the stone and the number. Which one is more real? Subscribe and hit the bell. The next section will make you question whether mathematics was invented or discovered. We have walked through 5 approaches. Fluxism says being flows. Idealism says being is thought. Materialism says being is matter. Dualism says being is both. Phenomenology says being is appearance. But there is a more basic distinction, one that cuts across all 5. A distinction so fundamental that you already use it without knowing. Real being, ideal being. Let me show you the difference with one question. Where is the number 7? Not the symbol 7 written on paper. Not 7 apples on a table. The number itself, the abstract entity that makes both the symbol and the apples 7. Can you touch it? Can you point to it in space? Does it exist in time? Did it begin when humans invented it? If you hesitate, you already feel the distinction. Real being, sometimes called concrete or actual being, is everything that exists in space and time. Everything your senses can reach. This stone, that tree, your heartbeat, the coffee cooling on your desk, the chair you are sitting on, the air moving in and out of your lungs. Real beings share 4 features. First, they are located. The stone is here, not there. Even light, even radio waves exist somewhere in space-time. Second, they change. The tree grows. Your heartbeat accelerates when you are nervous. Third, they interact causally. Kick the stone and your toe hurts. Water the tree and it lives. Fourth, they have a beginning and an end. Real beings are born and they die. The star ignites and eventually explodes. You were born. One day, you will not be. Think of every object you have ever touched. That is the realm of real being. It is the world of physics, biology, geology, the world science measures. But here is the catch. Is that all there is? If you say yes, you are a materialist or a physicalist. Nothing exists except real being. Thoughts are just brain activity. Numbers are just useful fictions. Justice is just a name we give to certain social arrangements. But if you say no, if you suspect that some things exist but not in space and time, then you are opening the door to ideal being.
Ideal being, often called abstract or conceptual being, is everything that exists independently of space, time, and physicality. You cannot stub your toe on an ideal being, but you also cannot think clearly without them. The most obvious examples: numbers and mathematical objects. The Pythagorean theorem was true before any human drew a right triangle. It will be true after humanity is gone. It has no location, it never changes. It causes nothing physical, yet without it, bridges collapse and phones don't work. Geometric shapes. A perfect circle never appears in nature. Every drawn circle has tiny wobbles. Yet we understand what perfect circle means. That meaning, that ideal circle, exists, but not in wood or metal or ink. Concepts like justice, beauty, truth, equality. You have never seen justice walking down the street. You have seen just acts, a fair verdict, an honest sharing. But to recognize those acts as just, you must already have the idea of justice itself. Propositions and meanings. The sentence, "snow is white," means something whether snow exists or not. That meaning is not physical. You cannot weigh it or freeze it. Yet it is real enough to be true or false. And here is the most personal ideal being: your memories. Where is your first memory located? Not in a place, not in a time you can revisit. It exists only as an ideal structure in your consciousness, yet it shapes who you are. Let me ask you, when you say 2 + 2 = 4, are you reporting a fact about the physical universe? Or are you accessing a timeless, spaceless realm of ideal truth? Plato would say, you are remembering. The ideal realm is the original. The physical world is the copy. Aristotle would say, no, the ideal lives inside the real. It is extracted from actual circles by your mind. Modern mathematics says, we don't know, but we keep finding that ideal truths work. The distinction between real being and ideal being creates 3 of the deepest debates in philosophy. Debate 1. Which is more fundamental? Materialists say only real being is fundamental. Ideal beings are human constructions, useful but not out there. Platonists say ideal being is more fundamental. The physical world is a shadow play of eternal forms. A third view says both are equally real. 2 irreducible dimensions of existence. Debate 2. Where do ideal beings live? In the mind? In a separate Platonic heaven? In language? Nowhere. They are just ways of speaking? Debate 3. Can ideal beings cause anything? A number cannot push a rock, but can the truth of a mathematical theorem guide a physicist's hand? Can the idea of justice inspire a revolution? If ideas have effects, then ideal being is not passive. It acts through us. Comment below. Give me an example of something you believe is real, but not physical. It could be love, a promise, a mathematical truth, your sense of self. I genuinely want to see what you come up with. And here's a twist. Phenomenology, our 5th approach, says this whole debate is based on a mistake. You never experience pure real being or pure ideal being. You always experience meaningful real beings and embodied ideal beings.
The number 7 shows up when you count 7 stones. The stone shows up as a stone, not raw matter, but a stone with form and function. So maybe the distinction is not a chasm. Maybe it is a spectrum. We have seen the 5 approaches. We have carved reality into 2 great categories, real being and ideal being. But now we must ask the 3 questions that every ontology must answer. Questions that have haunted philosophers for 2,500 years. Questions that you cannot escape once you have heard them. Question 1. Does being exist at all? Is there something, or is nothing more basic? Question 2. What is the single underlying stuff, the Arkhe, from which everything else comes? Question 3. Is being one or many? Does reality have a single root or a forest of irreducible roots? These are not abstract puzzles. They determine whether your life has meaning, whether truth is possible, and whether you are a speck of dust or a participant in something infinite. Subscribe and hit the bell. In the next section, we face nihilism, we walk with Thales, and we decide between monism and pluralism. And I promise you, by the end of those 3 questions, you will never look at nothing the same way again. We have mapped 5 approaches. We have distinguished real being from ideal being. But there are 3 deeper questions, questions that come before any approach or any category. These are the questions that woke philosophers up at night for 25 centuries. They have no final answer, but to ignore them is to never have philosophized at all. Question 1. Does being actually exist, or is nothingness more fundamental? Question 2. What is the single underlying stuff, the Arkhe, from which everything else comes? Question 3. Is being one or many? Does reality have a single root, or a forest of irreducible roots? Let us take them one by one. Question 1. Does being actually exist? This sounds like a strange question. Of course being exists. You are watching this video. I am speaking. The screen is real. But philosophers have dared to ask, what if nothing exists? This view is called nihilism, from the Latin nihil, nothing. Not the popular life has no meaning nihilism, but a radical ontological nihilism, the claim that there is no world, no self, no objects, no beings at all. The most famous defender of this view was the ancient Greek sophist Gorgias. He wrote a book titled On Non-Being, or On Nature, and argued 3 things. First, nothing exists. Second, even if something exists, it cannot be known. Third, even if it could be known, it cannot be communicated. Gorgias was likely being playful, a performance to show the power of rhetoric. But his arguments were never fully refuted. A more serious version comes from Buddhist philosophy, particularly Nagarjuna and the Madhyamaka school. They argued that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. Things exist only dependently, as webs of causes and conditions without any stable essence. Not absolute nothingness, but no solid, independent being either. The opposite view is realism, the common-sense belief that the external world exists independently of our perception. Most scientists, most people, and most philosophers are realists. But realism is not proven. It is a faith, a reasonable faith, but faith nonetheless. Think about this. When you close your eyes, does your room continue to exist? Almost certainly yes. But can you prove it? You cannot step outside your own consciousness. Every proof uses your senses, and your senses are exactly what is in question. This is called the problem of solipsism, the unsettling possibility that only your own mind exists. Comment below. Have you ever had a moment where you doubted that anything outside your mind is real? You are not alone. Most ontologists reject nihilism and solipsism because they lead to dead ends. They assume that being does exist and move on to the next question, which is, what is being made of? Question 2. What is the Arkhe, the single underlying stuff? The word Arkhe comes from ancient Greek. It means beginning, origin, first principle, or ultimate stuff. The question is simple but bottomless. If you strip away every quality, every color, shape, temperature, texture, what remains? What is the one thing that everything is, deep down? The first Western philosopher, Thales of Miletus, around 600 BCE, looked at the world and said, "Everything is water." Why? Because water takes many forms: solid, ice, liquid, water, gas, steam. It is everywhere. Life needs it. Thales saw a unity beneath diversity. His student Anaximenes said, "No, everything is air. Air is breath, soul, the stuff that animates. Rarefied air becomes fire. Condensed air becomes wind, cloud, water, earth." Heraclitus, our Fluxist, said, "Everything is fire. Fire is change itself, consuming, transforming, never still." Empedocles said, "You are all right, but not one, four. Earth, air, fire, water, the four roots." Then Democritus, the materialist, made the leap. Everything is atoms and void, tiny, indivisible particles moving in empty space. Their arrangement gives us every difference we see. Modern physics, 2,000 years later, confirmed the intuition, though we now have quarks, leptons, and fields instead of atoms. But here is where it gets fascinating. The Arkhe question never died. It just changed form.
Today, physicists ask, is the ultimate stuff matter, energy, or information? Some say string theory, tiny vibrating strings. Some say quantum fields, excitations of a universal field. Some say information, bits, not atoms, are the base of reality. That view is called digital physics, or it from bit. Philosophers offer other candidates: consciousness itself, idealism, everything is mind, pure becoming, process philosophy, nothingness as the ground. Let me ask you a personal version of the Arkhe question. When you look in the mirror, what is the single most fundamental truth about you? A collection of cells? A soul? A story? A temporary pattern in the universe's flow? There is no scientific machine that can answer that. Because the Arkhe question is not scientific, it is ontological. It asks, before any science does its work, what kind of thing is the world? And the third question follows naturally. Is that ultimate stuff one or many? Question 3. Monism versus pluralism. One root or many? If there is an ultimate stuff, is it one thing or many irreducible things? Monism says one. Pluralism says many. Let us start with monism. Parmenides, the great rival of Heraclitus, argued that being is one, indivisible, eternal, and unchanging. Change is impossible because change would require non-being, what something is not, and non-being cannot exist or be spoken of. For Parmenides, the everyday world of change is an illusion. There is only the single, solid, motionless sphere of being. A more sophisticated monism came from Spinoza in the 17th century. He said, there is only one substance, God or nature. Everything you see, rocks, stars, your body, your mind, are not separate things. They are modes or affections of the one substance. A wave is not separate from the ocean. You are not separate from the single being. Spinoza's monism is beautiful and terrifying. It means you and I are the same being looking at itself from different angles. Your death is not an annihilation. It is a wave returning to the ocean. Pluralism disagrees. The most famous pluralist was Leibniz, a contemporary of Newton. He proposed that reality is made of an infinite number of simple, immaterial, soul-like substances called monads. Each monad is windowless. It does not interact with others. Yet they are perfectly synchronized by a pre-established harmony. Each monad mirrors the entire universe from its own perspective. A simpler pluralism is dualism, two irreducible substances, mind and matter. Or trialism, mind, matter, and something else. Or the radical pluralism that says there are as many substances as there are things, a universe of absolute uniqueness. Which is more plausible? The case for monism: simplicity, elegance, unity.
Science seeks a single theory of everything. Monism satisfies the deep human longing for oneness, that everything is connected. The case for pluralism. The world is messy, diverse, irreducible. You cannot explain a feeling of love in purely physical terms. You cannot explain a mathematical truth in purely psychological terms. Maybe reality has multiple floors, and no elevator connecting them. Here's the hidden twist. Both monism and pluralism might be wrong if the world is process rather than substance. Process philosophers like Alfred North Whitehead say, "Stop asking what things are. Ask how things become." The fundamental reality is not one or many. It is event, occasion, experience. And with that, we have completed the three questions. We have asked whether being exists, what it is made of, and whether it is one or many. Ontology does not give you a final answer. It gives you the frame, the set of possible answers. You now know 5 approaches, from flowing fire to pure description, 2 types of being, real stone and ideal number, 3 ultimate questions, existence, Arkhe, monism, pluralism. In the final section of this video, we will answer one last question. Why does any of this matter? Not for exams, not for philosophical prestige, but for your everyday life, your choices, your beliefs, your relationship with reality itself.
We have traveled far, from Heraclitus and his river, to Plato and his cave, to Democritus and his atoms, from Descartes and his 2 substances, to Husserl and his call to return to things themselves. We have distinguished the stone from the number, real being from ideal being, and we have faced the 3 questions. Does being exist? What is its ultimate stuff? Is it one or many? You might be sitting there thinking, this is beautiful, but what does it have to do with my life? Everything. Because you already have an ontology, you just have never named it. When you set your alarm clock, you assume the future exists. That is an ontological commitment, a belief in the reality of time. When you apologize for hurting someone, you assume that person has an inner world, thoughts, feelings, a self that matters. That is a belief in ideal being, consciousness, mind, and a rejection of pure materialism. When you say, 2 + 2 is 4, you assume mathematical truth does not depend on your opinion. That is a belief in ideal being, numbers that exist whether you believe in them or not. When you feel awe looking at the night sky, you assume there is something larger than yourself. That is an answer to the question of monism versus pluralism, a sense that reality is one, vast, and interconnected. You cannot live without ontology. The only choice is whether your ontology is examined or unexamined. Socratic wisdom applies here. The unexamined life is not worth living, because the unexamined life is built on assumptions you have never questioned. What happens when you get ontology wrong? Ontology is not a game for bored academics. Getting it wrong has real consequences. If you believe only matter exists, no soul, no free will, no objective meaning, then why not act purely on self-interest? Why not treat others as machines? Many have drawn this conclusion. It leads to nihilism, cynicism, sometimes cruelty. If you believe only spirit exists, that the physical world is illusion, then why care about climate change? Why feed the hungry? Their suffering is unreal. This too leads to quietism and neglect. If you believe the ideal and the real are completely separate, a radical dualism, then you face the interaction problem. How does prayer change the world? How does intention move muscle? You may end up in a fractured universe where mind and body speak different languages. If you believe being is pure flux, everything changes, nothing lasts, then you lose the ground for truth, promises, identity. Can you hold someone accountable for a promise made 10 years ago if they are a different being now? If you believe being is pure, unchanging oneness, Parmenides' sphere, then you lose the world of change, growth, learning, love. All is static. The butterfly never emerges from the cocoon. Every ontology gives you something. Every ontology takes something away. The wise person does not pick one and dogmatically defend it. The wise person holds ontology lightly, as a map,
not the territory, and they remain open to wonder. Remember the fifth approach, phenomenology. Before you commit to any system, just describe what it is like to be here, alive, conscious, on this small planet. You wake up. Light falls on your face. You feel the weight of your blanket. A memory floats up. Someone's face, a summer afternoon. You make coffee. The smell fills the kitchen. You check your phone. A friend's message makes you smile. You worry about tomorrow. You remember yesterday. This stream of experience, this living, breathing, aching, hoping presence, is the raw material of ontology. All our philosophies are attempts to honor it, explain it, or escape it. The stone is real. The number is real. But you, the one touching the stone and thinking the number, you are the mystery that ontology can never fully capture. Because you are the one doing the ontology. You are the mirror in which being reflects itself.
So here is my invitation to you. After this video ends, take 5 minutes. Sit somewhere quiet. Ask yourself, what do I actually believe exists? Not what I was told, not what is comfortable, but what in my deepest moments I cannot doubt. Is it atoms? Is it consciousness? Is it both? Is it neither? You do not need to become a professional philosopher. You just need to become a curious human, one who knows that reality is stranger and richer than any single answer. Comment below with one sentence. For me, the most real thing is, I will read them, because ontology is not a solo journey. It is a conversation stretching across millennia. From Heraclitus to you, from you to whoever reads your words 100 years from now. If you found value in this exploration, like this video so others can find it too. Subscribe if you want to continue asking deep questions about knowledge, about ethics, about the nature of the self. And remember, the question, what is being, is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a door to be opened. You have just opened it. Thank you for thinking with me.